In this video, I want to help you with the quality and depth of your cross-court forehand, because it's one of the staple shots in tennis if you're trying to play at better levels. If you've got the sort of forehand that's a little bit weak and it drops short, when you play against good opponents, they're going to be able to step in and punish you down the line. So a really important fundamental shot that you need to be able to hit consistently. And what we're going to be doing is going through some of the biggest problems that players face, the most common mistakes that players face, and looking at ways that we can start to correct them and address them to really improve the quality of your cross-court forehand. I hope you find the video helpful. If you do, it'd be great if you give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel before, really appreciate it if you could do that as well. So the first problem we've got is late preparation, being too slow to prepare. And this is something that happens at different levels of the game because it's a relative problem. At slightly lower levels, we're thinking, okay, maybe the ball's coming over the net or it's bouncing on your service line before you start to prepare. But as the level starts to increase, the speed starts to increase, and when the ball's coming faster, the requirements for you to prepare quickly go up as well. Because as we've just said, if you're not ready and set up in the right position, the chances of executing your shot go down dramatically. So it might not be a case of not being there, but at slightly higher levels, maybe you just got pushed back and now you're on the back foot, as opposed to if you prepared and reacted a little bit more quickly, now you've got better balance, you can get more weight through the shot and hit a deeper, better quality of shot. So we've got preparation, which is going to be really important. And when we're thinking about improving preparation, again, it depends on the level, but there's normally a few things that we've got to solve. The first one is the quality and the timing of the split step. A lot of players simply do not use a split step, and that slows them down. It slows the reactions down. The reason we do a split step is so that we can land, use the elastic in our muscles, and react using the elastic stored in the muscles. The technique of the split step, landing with a nice, wide, stable base, allows us to then react and move in different directions to whatever ball that we're dealing with. So if you're not doing a split step, that's something that you need to work on. If you're not strong enough or flexible enough or don't have the conditioning to do a split step on every ball, again, that's something you need to work on. There's a reason why all pro players do a split step on every single shot. You've also got to work on the timing of a split step, trying to time the ball just after your opponent makes contact. But then the next thing that we're going to be thinking about in terms of late preparation, and this is maybe the bigger fish that we've got to fry with a lot of people, is that a lot of players can't read where the ball's going soon enough, and that's why the ball's crossing the service line before they start to prepare. But again, this happens at higher levels as well. If the ball is traveling at you at 60, 70 miles an hour with a lot of spin, you've got a lot less time to react. So potentially at the level that you're playing, your visual processing speeds aren't allowing you to react quickly enough to set up in the right position. So again, like I've just said, be there and get more balance through your shot and get more weight behind the ball. So the visual side of things can often be very important. I don't want to spend too long going into it now. I've created a video that's going to show you one of my favorite vision training drills, because vision is actually very trainable. You can do a lot of stuff to improve your ability to read where the ball's going. So I'll place a link down in the description so you can check that one out later. But here we're staying high level. The problem is late preparation. If you're not prepared early, it's going to create difficulties. Normally, we've got to work on the quality and the timing of the split step and doing anything we can to improve our ability to read where the ball's going. Those things are really going to help with your early preparation. The next problem that holds a lot of players back is going to be not setting up in the right position. Now, obviously, if you're not prepared and that's the problem, then we've got to deal with that first. But now we're preparing soon enough, but we're just not quite setting up in the right position. Obviously, we could be too far away from the ball, but the majority of the time players struggle with getting too close to the ball. And when you get too close to the ball, that's when you feel jammed. That's when you start having to pull off your shots, and it really breaks down the biomechanics and prevents you using the inside out swing path. It prevents you extending through your shot, and it really creates a lot of the technical difficulties that players try and overcome. So when you're working on the spacing, part of it might just be you need to improve the quality of your practice so that you're focusing on the spacing, because as the ball's coming across you, you've got to read where that ball's going. You've got to try and predict where the ball's going. You might have to think about it. So that could be part of it, just practicing more efficiently. Potentially, you might not be very good visually at judging where the ball's going. So visually we can be slow to read where the ball's going, but then as it's traveling, you might not know exactly where it's going, which makes it really difficult to set up the right position. But again, there's lots of stuff we can do with the visual system. I've created another video that you might like that's going to show you a couple of assessments for different visual skills that hold players back and prevent them from accurately judging distance and depth. I'll place that in the description as well. So we've got the visual side of things that we might need to address. And then often footwork lets players down. So one of the big differences between lower level and higher level players is the footwork. Like, it was always amazing. You watch someone like Andy Murray or Serena Williams, just some of the best players ever, when they're not playing well, they're hitting their feet. Come on, move your feet, move your feet. They're not hitting their arms. It's normally not using appropriate footwork and not being in the right place that they're concerned with. And one of the big differences, they often take lots of little steps. So lower level players, if I'm in this cross-court rally, I've done my split step here, I'm waiting for the ball. I've only got to get to there. It's not actually very far, so I don't need to take many steps. So most players would just kind of set up and plant their feet and go from there. But higher level players are much more likely to kind of step across, do a couple of little adjustment steps and really make sure they've got this spacing fine-tuned so that then they can use optimized mechanics. And remember, we're talking about hitting a good quality deep ball back. The better position that you get set up in, the more likely you are to execute a quality ball and not drop it short and allow your opponent to punish you. So you might just spend a little bit of time working on your footwork and movements of the ball. I've got another video that will go into more detail on some footwork flow steps that you can work on. I'll place that in the description as well. But that's our second problem, which is going to be setting up in optimal positions. The next problem is one that holds a lot of players back, and that is the shot selection. Obviously, we're hitting a deep cross-court forehand. We know what's going on there, but the shot selection comes down to the precise technique and the way that you're going to hit your forehand. And it comes down to the footwork patterns that you choose to use, because most players spend their time practicing neutral stance forehands. But if you watch higher level tennis, most cross-court rally balls are hit from open or semi-open stances. So either open stances or semi-open stances, but they're basically a continuum with the same mechanics. Now, when you hit with a neutral stance, you drive through your back hip, make contact, and it just naturally brings your pelvis around. That doesn't happen with the open stance forehand. Your pelvis doesn't just come around in the same way, so you need to use specific footwork patterns to enable you to hit a good quality ball from an open stance. So in terms of hitting this cross-court ball, if you watch the pros, there's going to be 2 or 3 key ones. The first one is going to be a reverse single leg pivot. So what I mean by that is I'm going to load up on my outside leg. I'm trying to hit topspin because I'm trying to get it back deep. I'm dealing with a deep ball. I've got to get up the back of the ball. So the footwork pattern is basically going to be this. So I'm going to initiate my swing. Sometimes you'll be able to make it happen with a regular follow through. A lot of the times you'll see pros do a buggy whip follow through to assist in the process. But the reverse pivot is this part. I'm loaded and in position, and now this leg is kicking up and I'm pivoting round. It's an essential footwork. Watch the pros. They use it a very large percentage of the time. If you don't use that footwork pattern, when you're dealing with a deep, good quality ball, it's really hard to get it back deep cross court with any spin. That's why they use it. The next one is going to be a 2-legged pivot, and there's different varieties of this. But basically, you're still loading off the outside leg, but now you're spinning and pivoting at the same time. So sometimes this is more of a mogul step with a on the run a little bit more, and they'll pivot through. But a lot of the times they'll be set up in position, and in order to drive up into the ball, in order to deal with the pace that's coming towards them, they do a pivot and momentum sends them around. So it can look slightly different, but I'm basically driving through this leg, throwing the racket and around. Or it might be a reverse 2-legged pivot where you're moving backwards, and then it looks a little bit more like that. But those footwork patterns aren't nice added extras. They are requirements in order to hit that shot, and if you don't use them, it's not going to allow you to hit a good quality deep shot, especially if you're dealing with a good shot yourself. So that's what we're thinking of in terms of the shot selection, is understanding what footwork you should be using when the ball is where, and also you're going to need to practice and work on those footworks. I don't currently have videos on those, but I will make them, and when they're made I will place them in the description as well, so you can check those out. The next thing that might be creating problems for your cross-court forehand is hitting the ball late. Poor quality timing and hitting the ball late. A lot of players struggle with it, and the reason they struggle with it is because it's one of the hardest parts of tennis. That's why it's one of the big differences between high level and low level players. Tennis is all about timing. The good news though is that we might have actually improved it already if you've worked on some of the things that I previously described, because one of the big reasons that people hit the ball late is because they were too late to prepare. So you work on that, it might really help. Also, when players are too close to the ball, that can cause them to be late to hit the ball. So that might solve it. And again, choosing the appropriate footwork patterns. Neutral stances, we're stepping in, generally taking the ball around there, which it makes it really hard because you're waiting for the ball to drop and it isn't. Whereas when you're using these appropriate footwork patterns, now we can deal with the ball more appropriately, and that's really going to help with your timing. Now, something just simple following on from that might help with your timing is just thinking about using your feet more, being a little bit more light on the toes, because for all of these footwork patterns, you have to be nice and light and bouncy, and we drive all of our strokes from the back hip. So just being lighter on your toes, thinking more about your feet than your upper body, that can actually be really beneficial for timing too. But obviously it can run deeper, because timing is all about your ability to accurately predict when and where the ball is going to arrive, so your visual spatial awareness, judging distance, judging depth, and it's all about the coordination of your body. So can you start your swing at the right time, and can you adjust the speed and shape of your swing relative to the ball that you're dealing with? And because every single ball is different, it becomes challenging. You know, you might have planned to get up into the ball and hit through it, but then it just skipped off the court too much. So instead, you have to do some kind of reverse spin with a buggy whip. Well, that requires amazing visual processing and reading where the ball's going and fantastic coordination. And if you don't possess sufficiently high levels of either of them, it's basically going to max out how well you can hit a cross-court forehand. The good news though is we can actually change this with training as well, but I'll talk more about it at the end of the video. The next issue that we need to address is going to be not watching the ball onto the strings through contact. And again, it's hard in large part because it's based on all the stuff that came before it. If you prepare late, set up in the wrong position, you're too close to the ball, you're hitting the ball late, it then can be really hard to keep your head still and keep your head down. So you might need to work on some of the things that we've already talked about to improve this problem, especially because tennis is a sequence of events. It's this, then this, then this, then this, then this, and you normally have to start at the beginning and kind of work your way through improving things. But then the other thing that can really challenge your difficulties in terms of keeping your head still and watching the ball through contact is going to be the visual and coordination side of it, but especially the visual side. Eye movements are very challenging for a lot of people. The ability to track the ball in different directions can be really challenging, and when that's the case, especially if you're kind of losing the ball at the last second or you're losing the ball, it's really going to affect the quality of your shot. And the way that you work on that one is definitely to train and improve the function of your eye movements. Now, I've got a number of videos that help you with that, but I'm going to place a link to one of them in the description to give you easy access. Okay, so we've covered a lot of information in this video, but it was important that I did that because you need to know how to address all these things, because one or two or three of those things might be the reason that you're not able to hit your cross-court forehand in the way that you want. But at least now you've got a logical kind of start point and a few tools that I kind of mentioned that are down in the description to start to work on addressing the issues. But if you would like to get more help, if you're really serious about improving your game, I help players to improve their skill level with brain-based training. So I teach them kind of applied neuro training techniques so they can improve things like vision, to improve their ability to react quickly and predict where the ball's going, and to improve coordination so you can use better technique and get better control over your shots. And you can also do things to improve kind of the mental side of things, the focus and concentration. So it's really cool stuff if you're interested in learning more. I've created a free masterclass that I'll place a link for up there and down there so you can check it out. And if you sign up for that masterclass, it is also going to tell you a little bit about my program and how I work with players, and it'll tell you what the next steps are that are involved if that is something you're interested in. Okay, hope you have enjoyed this video. Any questions about what we've talked about, leave them down below, and I'll see you next time.